Hello, my name is Sophie Von Laer, and I'm the CEO of a Strategic Maverick, a leadership development consulting firm. How do I describe it? Just a lot of learning. I got to talk to a lot of Bitcoiners and people that have so many diverse ideas and be able to be a part of this community that are so friendly, but at the same time they push back and challenge you. So I'm grateful for the hospitality of Mexicans because they're so warm, and as a Persian, I very much relate emotionally to them. But at the same time, in the space that we are in, people are so innovative and they're good at telling you that they disagree, and I love that kind of dialogue that is so constructive and helpful for me to learn. I think it was a fascinating experiment, if I may put it that way. I think there was a lot of new ideas that were presented in such a short amount of time. And I think bringing this kind of combination of technology with the philosophy of things was such a fascinating and comprehensive way of looking at it that I think is kind of a new thing. I don't see a lot of other venues, summits, conferences do the kind of a more of a hybrid approach. So I really like that, combination infusion that you guys have chosen to take into account. I think as we are approaching this new wave of Bitcoinization, I think we are moving away from the concept of money and finances and investment and more leaning on to the philosophy of Bitcoin and what it means for the society, for the community to embrace the concept of Bitcoin as something new, as something revolutionary. So I think a lot of the trends that are coming up are very much related to what happens if the dream does come true. What happens to the individual? What happens to the idea of leadership? What happens to the idea of the organization? Our organization going to be decentralized to adapt to the society that is now decentralized and the finance and the money shift? Or do we need to re-envision everything and rename and just change them fundamentally? So I think to answer to your question, I think a lot of things that are coming up are very much the follow-up questions to the revolution of money and changing money. I am very spiritual, so I do believe in God, and I really believe in the process of serving others. Before any speech, before any engagement, my ritual, if you may say, is to say a prayer that I become a conduit for serving others. I try to empty myself of ego and try to allow Holy Spirit to just go through me and become creative and really serve others. So my inspiration comes from a higher power that I think is the source of leadership. And for me, that's a very meaningful part of my development and spiritual formation that I don't really put on other people, but it's a part of my own journey that I really want to serve and be a part of, creating rather than taking from others. Absolutely. I think it's again the idea of when you give the individual power by taking it away from a centralized power, whether that's government, central bank, whatever. I think it's the responsibility of the individual to actually connect with the community, to really build their own newfound family. So I think there is no really cookie cutter answer as to how to go from the individual to the collective, because the good news is we really don't need the collective anymore. But psychologically, humans are designed to be tribal and actually thrive from being together and having like-minded people around. So it is very much up to the individual at this point to find a group of people that they affiliate with and feel safe with and can communicate, exchange ideas. So it is now the power is back in the hand of the individual to create the network that allow them to grow more. I think one advice is that I see time and time again, a lot of people don't see themselves as a leader. And I think it's because they think you have to have a title of leadership next to your name to see yourself as a leader. And I don't think that's necessarily true. You can be a leader of your family, yourself, your community. You can volunteer. Having that leader identity, research actually shows that by just viewing yourself as a leader, so having that perception of leadership leads to 75% increase in getting to leadership positions. So I think really like allowing this to embody power. It's okay for you to take initiatives, experiment, be out there and lead a group and have a say in the destiny and the fate of the people around you, and listen carefully to them, because leadership is about relationships. It's not about ego. It's about allowing other people's voice to be also amplified. So having an intentional way of calling yourself a leader, even if you don't have the title, is my biggest advice. I think the future of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency is something that's going to be hard to predict. I think anybody that would tell you they know what the future holds, yeah, you should kind of question their, morality or understanding of how the future goes. I think with the AI that is shifting so heavily as to what a human is and what we are, who we are, similarly, Bitcoin is also crossing a lot of boundaries in terms of economy and power and leadership and a lot of notions that we were used to for many, many centuries. So what will become is again back to the idea of what we choose to make. So I think the future, one thing we can trust is that the future will be heavily our responsibility as individuals. And I think, honestly, I don't think we're ready for that. I think we are so used to answering to a master. We are so used to asking for permission to have property rights and have our individual liberties, that this shift, this paradigm shift, needs to come with a set of education and intentional learning for the individual to take back their power, and also knowing how to use that power for what's good for the community and society, their nation, humanity as a whole. I think what you guys are doing here in this university is revolutionary. It's fantastic. I got to talk to some of your students and seeing that experiential learning theory aspect of it and adult learning, seeing that, giving people tools to experiment, take risk, create projects, create minimum viable products that allows them to fail fast and learn from their failures is the way that, is the way of the future. Because information really is readily available. You can Google, you can chat GPT and find out anything you need to know. But creating tacit knowledge, creating an understanding of reality requires experimentation. And I think the role of the higher education moving forward would be creating spaces like this for people to experiment more, giving them the self-efficacy and confidence to be able to throw themselves readily at these challenges. One thing that I can tell you, one of the most transformative experiences of my life was that I was working with a professor of mine, Dr. Natalia Picciotto, who's Brazilian and was working recently at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, United States. And she had this mentality of you learn by doing. And my second degree was in bioengineering, and I was doing electrode implantation in the brain. So I was putting electrode in the brain of monkeys at the time. And I was not very familiar with the brain map of a monkey as much. I've done experiments on rats and other smaller animals, but I wasn't so familiar. And by the way, the process was to cure Alzheimer's through electrode implantation. And what she did, which was so scary but really life-changing, was that she threw me into the experiment room and gave me an electrode and was like, you have 3 minutes to make this work, or the animal has died in vain. And for me, this was such a scary thing for someone that really cares about the suffering of other beings. This was such a revolutionary moment that I had to find my courage to figure it out. So this really became the fundamental aspect of my worldview of teaching people by letting them figure it out and creating a safe, psychologically safe space for them to experiment and become and find their leadership voice. Not really telling them, but showing them.